The Widow's Wake. Prologue. Let their screams be swallowed by the sea. The sails of the Widow's Wake tore through the horizon like jagged fangs, silhouetted against a blood-orange sky. The ocean, thick with mist and salt, parted unwillingly for the beastly vessel, its blackened wood groaning with every breath of wind. Its bow bore the shape of a weeping widow, stone-carved and eyeless, arms reaching forward, forever mourning, forever hungry. 10 monsters stood on her deck, not men, not any more. The island came into view, a speck of green and sun-baked stone tucked quietly in the folds of the sea, a peaceful place, unarmed, unprepared, perfect. Captain Roth Red Hand Varro stood at the helm, licking the salt from his blood-stained lips. He didn't smile, he bared teeth. "They don't know we're coming," he growled, running his fingers through his beard, still crusted with the dried blood of the last priest he gutted. "Let's ruin that." The order needed no echo. Landfall. By the time the first alarm was raised in the quiet fishing village of Braylen's Cove, it was already too late. Roth watched from the mayor's balcony from the moment his boots touched wood, and what he saw was the only kind of art he understood. Blood-belly Benjamin was the first off the longboat, feet slamming into the mud with a roar of delight. He charged toward the bakery, yanked the door clean off its hinges, and began stuffing half-baked loaves into his mouth between screams. Howlin' Heilmar hacked a man in half in the town square before the villagers could even scream. He howled into the air, swinging his twin axes in a dance of carnage, laughter rising like a demon's hymn. Mornin'. Mira strolled past the burning market stalls, whispering to each corpse she passed. When a child tried to crawl away beneath a cart, Mira lifted her veil just long enough for the boy to see what no child should. He died from the sight alone. Dredger John crushed a blacksmith's head beneath his iron foot, then used the molten forge to brand the skull of a screaming woman who begged for mercy. "Art," he muttered. The pirates split like wolves through meat. Cackles the clown skipped down cobbled streets, singing off-key lullabies, lighting fuses and laughing as entire houses blew apart. Granny Gutter walked into the church with a candle. She walked out alone, her apron soaked. The bell tower burned behind her, ringing once before collapsing into ash. They raided the wine cellar. They drank from barrels. They smashed shrines and pissed on altars. Skinner Thatch wore a priest's face like a mask and danced naked in front of the chapel's smoldering ruin. The villagers tried to flee into the hills, but One-Eyed Elwaz was already there, silent as a shadow. Arrows pierced every spine. No one reached the tree line. Captain Roth stood atop the mayor's balcony, watching the carnage below like an artist admiring his canvas. He raised his red hand to the sky. Let it burn, and it did. By sunset, Braylen's Cove was a smoldering crater. Smoke choked the heavens. The air reeked of blood, char, and rum. Nothing moved but flies. They left nothing. They never did. The signal. As the pirates stumbled back toward the beach, bellies full, cheeks flushed, and boots soaked in gore, a scout's cry echoed across the sand. "Ship!" All turned. There, far out in the ocean's endless blue, stood a shape. No movement, no crew, a ghost upon the waves. A ship, massive, black, unmoving. Its sails hung like rotten skin. No flags, no name, no noise. Roth squinted at the thing, jaw flexing. How the hell did we not see it? It weren't there before, Mira said, fingers dripping with rosary beads she'd torn from the neck of a nun. The crew stared in silence. For the first time in weeks, no one spoke. Then Roth smiled. Let's take her. They had no idea someone was already aboard. Chapter 1. Storms don't knock. The flames of Berlin's Cove still flickered behind them, a distant smudge of orange devoured by the sea's horizon. The widow's wake cut across the black water like a knife made of hate, her sails bloated with wind, her hull soaked with blood. On her deck, the crew of 10 laughed, bellowed, drank, and sang with rum-stained tongues. The ocean smelled of smoke and rot, and they loved it. The song of the dead wind crew. Crack the bones and drain the gold, sink their prayers, let none grow old, choke their gods on cannon flame. We slit the throats and steal the name, tie the children to the mast, slit the mother, drink the flask, burn their saints, break their backs. We are the curse that sails in black. They sang in unison, some off-key, others barking through cracked throats. Cackles the clown beat his fists on overturned crates, keeping rhythm. Blood-belly Benjamin clanged a roasting pan like a drum while chewing on a charred rib that may not have belonged to a pig. Howlin' Hyalmar roared each verse into the night sky like a war cry. One-eyed Elwaz tapped her fingers along her belt of poisoned blades, lips unmoving, but her single red eye blazed in rhythm. Captain Roth Vero stood at the bow, coat flapping behind him like devil wings. He stared ahead through the spyglass, watching the massive silhouette of the ghost ship grow larger and darker by the hour. "She's not moving," he muttered, mostly to himself. "Ain't seen a ripple from her hull. Ain't seen a lantern. Ain't heard a shout." "She dead, Captain?" asked Dredger John, polishing the teeth on his chain anchor. Roth cracked a grin. "Then we'll carve her open and see what leaks." The men cheered. Anticipation. They were gods on their own sea. Mira wrapped wet rosaries around her wrist, whispering prayers in reverse. "There's something on that ship," she muttered. "Not death. Worse." Skinner Thatch leaned over the rail, watching the reflection of the ship stretch along the water like a black wound. "I want new skin tonight. Fresh. Soft." "Whatever's aboard," said Granny Gutter with a grin. "Hope it's young and screaming." "Or rich," said Roth, raising his mug. "Let's take their gold, their souls, and their screams. In that order." "We'll be there by midnight," grunted Dredger, checking the moon's arc. "She's waiting. I feel it." The wind howled harder. They didn't know the ship was hollow. They didn't know the halls were soaked in old blood. They didn't know what lived in the silence. They only knew they were hungry for more. Chapter 2. The Floating Cathedral. The widow's wake lurched forward, groaning against the pull of the current as it came alongside the titanic vessel that had haunted the horizon. The ocean around it was thick with silence. No gulls, no splash, not even the whisper of wind. The massive ship loomed like a grave carved from night, her sails shredded, her wood blackened as if soaked in tar and sin. "Ugliest damn thing I've ever seen," muttered Blood-belly Benjamin, gnawing the last bite of a rat leg and spitting the bones into the water. "It looks cursed," Mira whispered. Her fingers danced over her soaked rosaries, though she grinned all the same. "And I like that." The boarding was a ritual in itself. Grappling hooks thrown, planks extended. Captain Roth was the first to step aboard. His red-dyed hand landed on the railing, then pressed to the hull. It was warm. That shouldn't have been possible. He didn't flinch. "Move, scabs," he barked. "There's gold in her gut. I feel it." The crew surged forward, drunk on destruction, high from the slaughter of Breland's Cove. 10 killers in black, teeth bared, boots thudding against rotting wood. They passed the figurehead, a pale stone widow, eyeless and weeping, and no one dared touch her. As they entered the main hall, every one of them paused. The inside was beautiful. Where they expected mold and bones, they found vaulted ceilings of painted gold. Stained glass arched overhead, catching the moonlight in brilliant blues and blood reds. Candles burned, lit impossibly, with flickering flame that gave off no heat. The floor beneath their boots was polished marble, clean, uncracked. Statues lined the walls. Angels with broken wings, saints with stitched eyes, and robed men holding tomes too ancient to read. "It's a church," Dredger John muttered, slack-jawed. "Nah," Heilmar said, wiping his axe on his sleeve. "It's a throne." "Looks like both," Mira added, stepping past an altar draped in velvet. "Or maybe neither." Granny Gutter dragged her fingernail along a wooden pew. "We're inside a coffin, big enough to bury the world." They spread out. The ship's corridors were narrow in places, but they led to impossible chambers, banquet halls covered in dust, libraries with untouched scrolls, empty beds perfectly made. Not a soul, not a whisper, but the ship breathed, and it watched. They spoke less as they wandered deeper. Eventually, they found the stairs to the lower chamber. They spiraled in smooth obsidian, slick and cold. No torches lit the way, yet the path glowed faintly, guided by some unholy light buried in the stone. At the bottom, the air changed, thicker, still, electric. A single door greeted them. 20 feet high, covered in gold carvings of angels impaled on swords. One eye of each angel was carved out. In their place, jewels flickered. Roth kicked it open, and the crew recoiled. The room was massive, round like a cathedral dome, with high pillars etched in Latin and symbols none of them could read. And in the center, beneath a skylight of crimson glass, lay a casket, marble white, edged in silver, adorned with the seal of the Vatican, a papal crest. Skinner Thatch stepped forward first, grinning with cracked teeth. "You've got to be shitting me." "A pope?" Cackles whispered. "What's a pope doing out here?" Elwaz said nothing. She circled the casket, one eye glowing in the dim light. Roth motioned them forward. "Open it." Dredger and Benjamin worked the latches. They groaned with age, but gave way. The lid was heavy, and it took 4 men to push it off. Inside lay a man in white robes, hands folded, a ring of gold on one finger. He looked untouched by time, his face serene. Holy, untouched. Mira spat. "He looks like he's sleeping." "He looks like a liar," Granny hissed. "No one dies pretty." Heilmar sniffed the corpse. "Smells like incense and secrets." "Take the ring," Roth ordered. "It's gold." Benjamin reached forward, but his fingers hesitated over the papal hand. A whisper rolled through the chamber. No voice, just breath. The flames in the candelabras trembled. "Coward," Roth said, and he stepped forward himself. With a grunt, he pulled the ring free. The Pope's eyes opened. They were white. No scream came from the corpse, no movement, just the eyes, open and wide, then shut. The room froze. No one spoke. Then Roth laughed. "Damn thing's got a twitch left in it." He held up the ring. "Add this to the pile." They laughed, uneasy but louder with each breath. They hadn't noticed the door slowly shutting behind them. Chapter 3. Drifted. Gold clinked, clattered, and echoed through the cathedral like halls of the ghost ship as the pirates looted everything they could pry loose. Chalices, icons, ceremonial knives, marble busts, even candle holders ripped from walls with blood-stained hands. Bloodbelly Benjamin stuffed a sackful of golden plates, still wet with dust and sacred oils. "Ain't never seen treasure shine like this," he said through gritted teeth. "Feels like it's smiling at me." "Shut up and lift," grunted Skinner Thatch, dragging a heavy, gilded crucifix across the marble floor, leaving scratch marks that screamed behind him. Granny Gutter filled her apron with bejeweled trinkets. "God's gold spends the same as any other," she said with a grin that made cackles cackle even louder. Captain Roth stood in the center of it all, clutching the papal ring in one hand, a ceremonial dagger in the other. "This ship's a floating vault," he muttered. "Can't believe no one's touched her." Elwaz didn't speak. She never did. But she lingered by the doorway, her one glowing eye fixated on the far end of the chamber where the shadows didn't seem to move. At all. Eventually, Roth raised his hand. "That's enough. Load up and get back to the boat." With sacks over their shoulders, coins in their boots, and crucifixes clutched like daggers, the crew ascended the way they came. The spiral stairs groaned under their weight. The walls felt narrower now, the air thicker. Every candle they passed seemed to flicker in warning. They reached the upper deck and pushed open the hatch, eager to spill into the salty night, to stumble back onto the widow's wake, and to toast the easiest treasure they'd ever stolen. But the dock was gone. Gone. The rope line that had once tethered the widow's wake to the ghost ship now dangled limply in the waves, frayed and slack. And their ship? It was there. But far, miles away, adrift on a glassy sea, its black sails shrinking against the horizon, moving with no wind. No one spoke at first. Then Mira whispered, "That ain't right." "How?" Cackles said. His voice didn't rise to a shriek like usual. It just cracked. "She's moving," Hjalmar muttered. "But the wind's dead. You feel that? Nothing's blowing, not a gust." "Did someone not tie the goddamn ropes?" Roth growled, stepping forward. "I tied it," said Dredger, eyes narrowing. "Twice. Roped it good to the port bow myself. You saw me." "I saw nothing," Roth barked. "You sure you weren't drunk?" Benjamin shoved Dredger. "I watched him tie it." "Then someone untied it," said Mira, stepping away from the rail, eyes darting. "Or something did." "Bullshit," Roth snapped. "No one boards my ship without me knowing." Skinner dropped his sack of gold with a thud. "You think it drifted on its own?" "I don't think it drifted at all," Eloise whispered. It was one of the few times she ever spoke, and her voice was colder than ice on a grave. They turned to her, startled, but she didn't elaborate. She just stared at the horizon. The arguing intensified. Accusations flew like blades. "You were supposed to double the knot." "You were piss drunk, John. Don't lie to me." "You saw the hull. Who says the damn ship even wanted to stay tied?" Roth roared above them all. "Shut up!" They fell silent. The captain's face was pale, but his eyes still blazed. "We've survived worse. We'll row to her. One of the longboats still hanging off the side. We'll load it up, take the treasure, get back to the wake." But no one moved, because there were no waves, no sound, and the other boat, the one they'd used to board, was nowhere to be seen. Dredger walked to the far rail and peered down. "Captain, the longboat's gone." Roth turned slowly. "What?" "Gone," Dredger said again. "Was there when we got here. Gone now. Ropes are cut." "They were cut?" Mira hissed. "Sharp. Clean. Like a blade." The gold felt heavier, the night colder, and far above them, the massive stained glass window of the cathedral glinted like an eye. Watching. Chapter 4. The Deeper Drown. There was one longboat left, a single rowboat hanging from the side of the cathedral ship by two thick iron chains, swaying just inches above the black water. The pirates stood in silence around it, staring down at the lifeline they had left, their only hope of reaching the widow's wake now drifting further and further out like a memory. "I ain't getting in that thing," muttered Skinner Thatch. "Not after what we saw." "We ain't got a choice," Roth snapped, his patience thinning. "We're not dying on this floating tomb." He turned to the crew, eyes sharp, voice hard. "4 of you go. The strongest, the fastest. Get to the wake. Bring her back. The rest of us hold here." There was silence. Then, slowly, hands began to rise. Hjalmar, Dredger John, Mira, Bloodbelly Benjamin. Killers, each of them. The kind of men and women who could row through a storm, fight a sea beast, and still have the strength to drink a barrel dry. "You bring her back," Roth said. "You don't stop. You don't look back. You row." "Aye," Dredger grunted, dropping into the boat with a heavy thud. One by one, they climbed down into the longboat, blades sheathed, sacks of gold slung tight. Mira took the helm, her hair tied back in a braid, her rosaries tucked into her belt. Hjalmar gripped the oars. Benjamin sat in the rear, already chewing on dried meat. "Row!" Roth barked. The chains creaked and the boat was lowered into the water. A splash, a bob, then the rhythmic thunk of the oars hitting sea. The remaining 6 pirates stood at the railing, watching them go. For a while there was nothing but the sound of rowing, slow and steady, slicing the water. Then the wind died, completely. No breeze, no movement. The sea became like glass. The stars reflected on its surface, unmoving. The widow's wake was still there, but distant now, like a toy ship drifting toward the edge of the world. And then it came, a wave, no warning, no build, just a single towering wall of water, rising from the flat ocean like a hand reaching up to snatch the sky. It moved fast, too fast. "Row!" Mira screamed from below. But it was too late. The wave hit the longboat like a falling mountain. It smashed the hull into splinters. Oars flew. Bodies vanished beneath the black. Not a scream echoed back. Only the crack of wood, the roar of the wave, and silence. The water calmed again, still, glass-like, empty. Roth didn't speak. None of them did. Benjamin, Mira, Hjalmar, Dredger, gone. Granny Gutter stumbled backward from the rail, her face pale. "That weren't no wave," she whispered. "They died," Cackles murmured. "Like nothing, just gone." Eloise turned away from the edge. Skinner stared into the sea like it might explain itself. Captain Roth clenched his fist so tight the papal ring dug into his palm. "That ship," Mira had said earlier before they boarded, "it looks cursed." They hadn't listened. They had laughed. And now, for the first time in a long, long time, they were afraid. Chapter 5. Splinters and Whispers. They stared at the water for what felt like hours. The ocean had swallowed their own before their eyes, and now it stared back, Flat, calm, innocent, like it hadn't just crushed 4 monsters without warning. Captain Roth turned from the rail with a snarl and slammed his fist into the mast. The echo rang through the ship like a cannon. "We're not dying here," he said. "Not like that." No one argued, not even Cackles. They gathered in the grand hall beneath the cathedral ceiling. The candlelight was weaker now, flickering, like the ship could hear them and was growing tired of waiting. "We split up," Roth said, pacing. "Check every floor, every room. We find sails, rudders, oars, anything that moves this beast or gets us back to ours." "That's suicide," muttered Skinner. "Splitting up on a ghost ship? You seen the stories they etch on the walls here?" "We split," Eloise said calmly. The crew looked at her, surprised she'd spoken again. "If we stay huddled, we die slower," she added. "But we still die." Roth nodded. 2 to a floor, Granny and Skinner, lower levels. Eloise and Cackles above deck. I'll take mid-deck. Mick, he looked around. "Where the hell is Mick?" No answer. "Mick!" Roth shouted, his voice cracked. "Nails!" Silence. They hadn't noticed he was missing. "Fan out," Roth growled. "And if you see that bastard, slap him for wandering off." Skinner and Granny lower decks. The stairs creaked under their boots as they descended into the ship's belly. Water dripped from somewhere, slow and rhythmic like a ticking clock. "This place is alive," Granny muttered. Skinner ran his blade along the wall. "Then let's gut it." They found crates of ceremonial wine, barrels of embalming oil, and locked chests filled with papal robes and old bones. In one corner they found a stack of mirrors, all draped in black cloth. Granny reached for one. "Don't," Skinner said. "I wasn't asking permission," she snapped and yanked the cloth away. Her reflection wasn't there, but Skinner's was, and he was screaming. She dropped the cloth. The mirror cracked. They didn't speak again. Cackles and Eloise upper deck. They climbed into the choir loft above the grand hall, where stained glass windows shimmered with unnatural color. Pews stretched below like crooked teeth. "This place is pretty," Cackles whispered. "Pretty in a dead girl kind of way." Eloise didn't respond. He looked at her. "You scared?" She didn't blink. "Good," he giggled. "Me too." They found a bell tower, but the bell was made of bone. Rib bones, fused together with gold hanging from a chain of vertebrae. Beneath it a plaque. "The tolling of the innocent." Neither touched it. Roth, middeck. Roth searched alone, blade drawn. He kicked open doors and shattered glass. He found a room filled with portraits, paintings of cardinals, bishops, even popes. But the faces had all been gouged out. Another room had cages, small ones, child-sized. He didn't linger. In the galley, he found a journal, leather-bound, locked. He pried it open with his dagger and read, "This is not a ship. This is a mausoleum in motion, a prison for the sacred dead, and one of them woke up." He shut the book. Then he turned and saw Nails Mick standing in the hallway, watching him. "Mick!" he shouted. "Where the hell have you been?" Mick didn't answer, just stared. A nail was missing from his cheek, and his eyes were completely white. Roth blinked, and Mick was gone. Each pirate searched. Each found nothing that made sense. And above them, the ship breathed, watching. Chapter 6. The Wages of Sin. Nails. Mick walked the corridors like a man who'd forgotten what his own feet felt like. His eyes were milk white, his breath slow and silent. But his hands, still twitching with hunger. The ring. He couldn't stop thinking about the ring. Roth had pulled it and left the rest. A whole robe stitched with gold thread, jewels probably sewn under the arms, a chain around the neck he'd glimpsed under the collar. Nails hadn't chosen to walk away from the others. His legs had chosen for him. Something in the ship had known him, known what he wanted, and pointed him back. He found himself back in the cathedral chamber. The massive dome still shimmered with that eerie red glow from the stained glass above. The casket of the Pope sat exactly where they'd left it, closed. But Nails remembered what he saw inside. The robe, the jewelry, the ring they already took. But what else? He stepped toward it, slow and twitchy. "I know you got more in you," he muttered. His voice rasped like dry leaves. "Gold don't ride alone. Not on your kind." He pressed his hands to the side of the casket and pried it open again. The lid groaned. The Pope's body lay still, peaceful. Nails leaned in, one hand searching the inner folds of the robe. "What you hidin', huh?" He licked his lips, teeth yellow, nails twitching in his cheeks. He found a gold chain, yanked it. He reached again, felt something else. A medallion? He pulled harder, and then the Pope's hand clamped down around his wrist, cold, like stone pulled from a glacier. Nails gasped but couldn't scream. The corpse sat up, eyes open, glowing white, burning from within. The mouth moved slowly, lips curling back to show perfect, preserved teeth. Then the voice came, deep, echoing, and layered with something ancient. "For the wages of sin is death." Romans 6:23. The Pope stood, dragging Nails to the marble floor like a rag doll. Nails flailed, kicking and spitting, but the grip didn't budge, not even a tremble. "But the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord." The Pope's mouth opened wider than it should have, too wide. He bit into Mick's face, not just his skin, but his soul. Nails shrieked as the teeth tore through flesh, then skull, then memory. Visions of all the people he'd murdered, all the women he'd cursed, all the blood he bathed in. It all poured out of him as the Pope consumed him alive. Mick's nails popped from his skin. His eyes burst. His body arched backward as if held by invisible wire, and then split open top to bottom, like a ripped sack of meat. Blood splashed across the chapel walls. A single crucifix above the altar cracked straight down the center. Nails, Mick collapsed into a pile of twitching, smoking limbs. The Pope stood over him, robes unwrinkled, hands now red. He returned to the casket and laid himself back inside, eyes closing slowly, and the lid slid shut on its own. Chapter 7. Echoes in the Hull. The ghost ship creaked and whispered like an old cathedral still clinging to a forgotten god. Its bones were wood, but its breath was something else, something colder, something alive. The pirates moved through her in pairs, each in a different part of the ship, searching for any way off, and slowly unraveling under the weight of what surrounded them. None of them knew that Nails Mick was already dead. None of them knew this ship wanted them apart. Eloise and Cackles above deck. The wind had vanished, but the sails still swayed. Eloise walked in silence, her boots tapping softly against the deck planks, her red eye glowing faintly in the gloom. Beside her, Cackles hummed tunelessly and skipped in zigzags like a broken puppet. "This deck's got bones under it," Cackles said suddenly. Eloise didn't respond. "Can feel 'em, like teeth, just waiting to bite." The ship above deck was still, yet things moved. Ropes that twitched when no wind blew. Pulleys that shifted like something was breathing inside them. The sails were black, but not cloth. They looked like pressed ash, paper thin and brittle, yet they did not tear. Eloise paused by the mainmast. A thick black rope coiled down from the top, swaying gently, as if it were alive. She stared. It stared back. Up near the crow's nest, they found a bundle of feathers stitched into the shape of a man, eyes sewn shut, stuffed with coins. "A sailor doll," Cackles whispered, clutching it to his chest. "To keep the crew safe." Then he giggled. "Guess it stopped working." The wood was soft up here, too soft, like flesh pretending to be timber. The sky remained starless. Granny and Skinner, lower decks. The air was wet and thick as blood soup. Every wall glistened, every door dripped. Granny Gutter shuffled ahead with her lantern raised, its flames sputtering against invisible drafts. Skinner walked behind her, dragging his bone blade across the floor, leaving deep gouges. The lower decks were a labyrinth of relics. Ancient coffins sealed in wax, rusted cannons covered in scripture, crucifixes warped into hooks. They passed a room full of chairs, all facing a single wall with a mirror. Each chair had straps. The mirror reflected nothing. "This place was never meant to float," Granny said. Skinner grunted. "What was it meant for?" "Confession." They found a room where the walls were covered in writing, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, layer over layer. But one message stood out, scratched in fresh gouge marks across the center beam. "Do not bleed here." "What happens if we do?" Skinner muttered. "I think we already have." Roth, mid-deck. Captain Roth stalked the mid-deck like a cornered animal. The walls seemed closer now, the ceilings lower, as if the ship were adjusting itself. Adapting. He passed door after door, each one opening on its own, then slamming shut behind him. He entered a dining hall where plates were set for 13. Each seat bore a name. He looked closer. Each name was one of his men, even his own. A place setting sat before him. The goblet was filled with red, thick, not wine. He turned away. Next, a room filled with confession booths, dozens of them. One was open. Inside, a dagger rested on the seat. On the wall behind it, a mural of a pope with a bleeding heart. He stepped into a hallway lined with statues. All of them were him, screaming. All 5 remaining pirates searched. Each came back with empty hands and heavy eyes. They gathered in the cathedral hall, breathing heavier, standing farther apart. "Mick ain't back," Skinner said. Roth didn't answer. "Nothing up top," Cackles said. "Unless you count dolls and bones." "Below's worse," Granny muttered. "That ship don't float. It remembers." They looked at each other, and for the first time, no one smiled. Chapter 8. The Empty Throne. The 5 remaining pirates stood on the forward deck of the ship, backs to the Black Sea, faces to the windless sky, empty-handed, out of ideas. The weight of the silence pressed against their chests like a stone slab. "I found nothing," Skinner said. "Rusted cannons and coffins." "Ropes that moved when they shouldn't," added Cackles. "No rudder, no helm, no wheel." "There's no anchor either," Granny said, squinting at the calm waves. "And yet, we don't drift." Eloise stood off to the side, still and unreadable. She hadn't spoken since they gathered. Captain Roth gritted his teeth. The shadows around his eyes were darker now. His blade hung lower on his belt, like it was too heavy to lift anymore. "We're going back," he said. "Back where?" Cackles asked. "To the Pope." That made them all quiet. "We can't row, can't signal, can't drift," Roth continued. "But that thing, his coffin, it seals, solid. If we line it with barrels, rig the frame, we can make a float, get to the wake." "You want to ride the Pope's casket out of here?" Skinner asked with a scoff. "You got better wood on this ship?" Roth snapped. No answer. He turned and led them toward the cathedral hall. No one argued. The walk back felt longer than it should have. The hallways seemed narrower, the shadows deeper. Every window they passed showed nothing but darkness, even though it should have been dawn. They reached the heavy golden doors. Roth placed his hand on the iron handle and paused. No breath, no wind. He pushed. The doors groaned open. The room beyond was cold and wrong. The candles were snuffed. The red light from the stained glass above had dulled to a sickly gray. The casket was open and empty. No Pope, but there was something else. At the base of the dais, slumped and mangled, was Nails Mick. What was left of him? He was torn wide open, split from clavicle to groin. His nails, those jagged steel bits he'd hammered into his body, were gone, pulled out. His face was slack, eyes burned white, tongue missing. Roth took a step back. Granny hissed a breath through her teeth. "Holy hell!" Cackles bent down slowly. "That's Mick." He reached toward the corpse. Eloise grabbed his wrist. "No," she said. "Look closer." They all leaned in. The marks on his face, bite marks. "Something chewed him open," Skinner muttered. "Like he was dinner." Cackles stood and turned toward the casket. "Where's the Pope?" Granny whispered a prayer in a language no one understood. Eloise walked slowly toward the open coffin and ran her fingers along the inside, still warm and wet. The ring that Roth had stolen now sat in the center of the casket, clean, polished, and placed, like a message. Roth stared at it, then at Mick, then at the corpse-shaped absence in the marble box. "It was never a corpse," he said. "Not really." They looked at each other, and in that moment, finally, completely, they understood. This ship wasn't cursed. It was bait, and they had taken it. Chapter 9. The Ghost in White. They stood around the empty casket in silence. The body was gone. Mick was dead, violently, and the stolen ring had been returned, polished, centered, almost ceremonial. Captain Roth stared down at the ornate coffin, jaw clenched. "We take it." "The box?" Skinner asked, brow furrowed. "It floats. It seals. It's all we've got." "We're gonna ride a dead man's coffin through the sea," Cackles muttered, pacing. "This is hell. This is actual hell." Eloise stepped forward, brushing her fingers along the edge of the marble. "He's not dead." That shut them all up. Roth nodded once. "Exactly. We saw his body," Granny hissed, voice shaking. "His eyes opened, but he didn't breathe. He didn't move." "He moves now," Eloise whispered. No one argued. They grunted as they dragged the Pope's casket down the long marble aisle toward the cathedral doors. The thing was heavier than it had any right to be, like it was anchored to the ship's very soul. But they pulled, gripped tight, worked together, until they reached the cathedral entrance, and froze. Standing in the archway, perfectly still, perfectly lit by the crimson light bleeding through stained glass, stood the Pope. Alive. White robes unwrinkled, hands folded, eyes glowing. His voice came slow, heavy, layered in echo. "For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought to light." Luke 8:17. He turned and walked away, slowly, without a sound. down the hallway, into the ship's throat. They stared. Roth dropped the casket. "Go!" he shouted. They ran, boots slamming, steel clanging, breaths ragged. They turned the corner after him. Nothing. The hallway was empty. No robes, no echo, no sound. "He vanished," Skinner gasped. "No," Granny snapped. "Ghosts don't walk. Ghosts don't bite." "We saw his body," Cackles growled. "We opened that box. We looked into his dead damn eyes." Eloise turned toward Roth. "Dead men don't quote scripture." Roth's eyes narrowed. "He wants us scared, wants us chasing shadows." "We're already scared," Granny said. "Now we just get angry." They stood there in silence, the flickering candlelight around them twitching like it was afraid to stay lit. Then Roth said what they were all thinking. "Enough running." He pulled his blade. "We go into fight mode." Chapter 10. False Prophets and Fear. They barricaded themselves in the dining hall. 13 chairs, 12 names now. The place setting still sat, untouched, waiting. Cackles was the first to speak, pacing like a rat in a burning cage. "What if this whole ship's a test? A trap set by the Pope's enemies? Maybe he's a holy weapon, sent to wipe out the worst of us." Granny hissed. "The worst of us? Have you met you?" "He bit Mick's face off," Skinner growled. "That's not divine, that's feral." "Maybe he's a demon wearing holy skin," Granny muttered. "Maybe they put him in that box to seal him away." Eloise leaned against the wall, silent, arms crossed, eye flickering. Captain Roth sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled beneath his chin. His stare was blank, locked on nothing. "We're inside something's plan," he said quietly. "I don't know if it's God. I don't know if it's the devil. But it's not chance." "There's no rudder," Cackles snapped. "No helm, no damn wind. How do we float without floating?" Skinner slammed a knife into the table. "We shouldn't have touched the ring." "We shouldn't have touched the boat," Granny barked. They all shouted at once, accusations, theories, panic. "What if we're already dead?" Cackles screamed. "What if this is hell?" "Then why are we bleeding?" Skinner yelled. "Maybe someone's dreaming this," Granny whispered. "Maybe we're just inside someone's nightmare." "Or maybe," Roth said, his voice now calm and hollow, "they buried him wrong. Maybe they weren't moving him. Maybe they were hiding him. And we dug him up." Silence fell. The candles flickered. Eloise finally spoke. "He was waiting for someone." They turned to her. "What do you mean?" Roth asked. "He wasn't dead," she said. "He was listening, waiting for the right voices, the right sins." Granny shivered. "Then he found them." Cackles chuckled bitterly. "What a crew to bring to judgment." They all stared at the empty seat marked Mick. Then Roth stood. "Enough guessing." "We fight?" Skinner asked. Roth nodded. "We fight." Chapter 11. The Prayer in White. The chamber was dark but not dead. Somewhere above, the red light from the stained glass pulsed like a heartbeat through the cathedral bones of the ship. The wind had stopped long ago, but the walls still whispered scripture. And there, at the center of the room, knelt the Pope, alive, still, head bowed, hands clasped tight enough for the skin to stretch. His white robes were stained with old blood, not his own. He spoke in Latin at first. softly, reverently. Then in broken English, each word cracked from a throat that hadn't used sound in years. My God, my Father in heaven. He pressed his forehead to the floor, voice trembling. Forgive me for my thoughts, for my rage, for the red I've spilled in your name. The silence of the room swallowed him. His voice cracked again, older now but passionate. You made me your servant. I was to protect, to shepherd. He trembled, but I did not turn the other cheek. A pause, a breath. I struck them all. His fingers tightened, knuckles white. They burned temples in your name, twisted your word to excuse power, gold, and cruelty. They touched the children. They lied in confession. They used the altar to steal, to feed. He shook. So I silenced them. His eyes opened. They glowed faintly now. Not evil, but certain. Forgive me, Lord, but I was not made for peace. I was made for justice, the kind they fear when the sermon ends. He slowly rose from his knees, still clasping his hands. Let me be your sword. Let me be your flame. I do not ask for heaven. I ask for the right to cleanse. His voice dropped to a whisper. Send them to me, Father. The wicked, the cruel, the defilers, the blood breathers. A silence. His hands loosened, just a hair. But if I have ever struck a mother who did not deserve it, if I have ever silenced a child who was only afraid, if in the long dark years I have ever mistaken my own hunger for your voice, forgive that too. Forgive that faster than you punish them. His forehead touched the cold marble. Because I no longer remember the difference. Then, slowly, the certainty returned to him like a robe he had never taken off. He turned to the shadowed doorway. I will show them the fear they gave. And with that, the Pope stood, walked barefoot into the dark hall, and the ship trembled with anticipation. Chapter 12. Drunken Prayers. They found the bar by accident. Down a narrow hallway behind a rusted door marked only by a single Latin word. Absolvo. The air inside was stale but not dusty. The room was untouched. Bottles still full, glasses still clean, bar stools still waiting. A fire burned in the hearth, flickering gold and red despite no wood, no smoke. It was almost welcoming, and that made it worse. Roth was the first to step in. He walked behind the counter, sniffed a bottle, and poured. He didn't speak. He drank. The others followed. Skinner, Cackles, Granny, Eloise. One by one they took their place in the room. No chairs scraped, no clinks of bottles, no laughter, just quiet sips and shaking hands. They didn't drink to celebrate. They drank because they had no plan, no strength, no hope. Cackles poured a second glass with a trembling hand. Easier to die sleepin', he muttered. Feels less real. No nightmares, Skinner grunted. You don't wake up from this, Granny said, but she still drank. Even Eloise took a sip. She held the glass a long time before drinking. Something about the Pope's stillness had settled into her bones. She had killed more men than she could name. In the corner of a mind she rarely visited, she wondered if a man like that could be reasoned with, if bargaining was possible, if a knee bent at the right moment could buy a life. She said nothing, drank, set the glass down carefully. No one toasted, no one looked each other in the eye. Roth sat in the corner, arms crossed, bottle at his feet, blade in his lap. drink," he muttered. "If he kills us tonight, I want to be too numb to care." Hours passed. The fire never dimmed. One by one they slumped over. Chairs creaked, bodies drooped, breaths slowed, and eventually they all slept. Except one. Skinner Thatch twitched awake. A cold sweat rolled down his spine. He hadn't dreamed in years, but tonight he sat up slowly. His mug was still full. The fire had gone cold. The others were frozen, still breathing, but unmoving. Then he saw him, at the end of the bar, the Pope, standing, hands folded, eyes glowing like hollow candles. Skinner stood, blade trembling in his hand. "Why," he croaked, "why don't you just kill us now? We're sleeping. We're helpless." The Pope tilted his head. He spoke, calm and slow. "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but for all to come to repentance." 9. Skinner blinked. The Pope was gone. The bar was empty, and something tightened around his ankle. Morning. The pirates woke to silence. The fire was out, the bottles untouched. "Where's Skinner?" Roth asked. No one answered. They heard a creak above them, looked up, and screamed. Skinner Thatch was hanging upside down above the bar, strung by one leg, nailed through the ankle to the ceiling beam. His throat was sliced open, tongue missing, and a Bible verse carved into his chest. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." Romans 12:19. Chapter 13. The Fire That Sees. The fire in the bar was out. So was their fight. The pirates stood in silence beneath Skinner's body, swaying gently from the ceiling beam, blood dried like ink down his inverted chest. The verse carved into his flesh still gleamed with fresh crimson. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." Cackles looked like he was going to vomit. Granny kept whispering a prayer in some old tongue, over and over like a broken music box. Eloise had gone still again, so still it was hard to tell if she was even breathing. Roth clenched his jaw. "We bring him down. He was a bastard, but he was ours." No one argued. He turned to the room. "Tools. We need something to pull that nail." Cackles hesitated. "I'll go." Roth nodded. "Be fast." Cackles ran. His boots thudded down the corridor as he vanished into the belly of the ship. The others waited below Skinner's body, staring at the slow drip of black blood that had soaked into the floor. "I told you we shouldn't have drank," Granny muttered. "You drank too," Roth growled. "I drink to forget," she spat. "But I can't forget this." Cackles moved through the lower corridor fast, muttering to himself, checking boxes, slamming doors. He found a rusted pry hook in what looked like an abandoned kitchen, the kind they'd use to hang pigs. "Close enough," he said, gripping it tight. He turned and froze. The Pope stood in the doorway, arms down, robes stained with ash, face blank. His eyes, those horrid, glowing eyes, seemed to shine brighter in the dark. Cackles didn't scream. He ran, fast. He bolted through the nearest hall, barreling down wooden steps and toward the bar, yelling behind him, "He's here! He's—" The lights around him flickered red. His nose began to bleed, then his ears, then his eyes. "Woo!" he gasped, dropping to his knees, clawing at his face. The blood poured from every socket. He screamed, tried to crawl, and burst into flames. Not a flicker. An eruption, like a match tossed into dry oil. He writhed, convulsed. Bones cracked in the fire. And through the flames, standing perfectly still, the Pope stepped forward, watching, as Cackles burned alive. Then, as the screams turned to wet gasps, the Pope whispered, "And if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell." Matthew 5:29. The flames devoured what was left. Only ash and smoke remained. Back in the bar, the others waited. "Too long," Roth said. "He should be back by now." Eloise slowly raised her hand and pointed down the hall. They smelled it before they saw it. Burning. Chapter 14. The wages paid. They smelled the smoke first. It rolled in slow through the cracks of the barroom door, thick, sweet, and heavy with the stench of burning meat. Roth stood. Eloise didn't move, but her glowing red eye flickered like a candle in wind. "Cackles," Roth muttered. "He's burning." "No," Granny whispered, already moving. "No, no, no." "Granny," Roth snapped. "Don't." But she was already out the door. The hallway glowed with pulsing red, like a furnace coming alive. Granny Gutter raced down the corridor, skirt dragging, bones aching. Her breath caught in her throat as the smoke thickened. The walls shimmered like hot metal. Then she saw it. Cackles, or what was left of him. A black skeleton of meat and ash, arms frozen mid-reach, face melted into a scream. Granny dropped to her knees, clawing at the floor near the fire, trying to find anything to smother the flames, her apron, her cloak, her own body if it would help. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her, only the voice. "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Exodus 22:18. She froze, slowly turned, and saw him, the Pope. His eyes blazed white-hot now. His robes had shifted, longer, darker, trailing behind him like smoke. In one hand, he held a small, ancient thurible, an incense censer, chained and burning. He began to swing it. Granny gasped, her body convulsed. The censer's smoke turned black, pouring into her face like ink. She choked, stumbled, clawed at her mouth, then screamed as her lips sewed themselves shut. Blood poured from her ears, her hands blackened, fingers curling backward as if repenting in death. Her legs snapped inward with an audible crack, folding her to her knees. The Pope stepped forward, laid a hand on her forehead, and whispered something in Latin. Her body exploded outward in a storm of ash and hair, slamming the walls with bone dust. Only her rosary remained, still warm. Captain Roth and Eloise had just turned the corner when they saw it. Granny. Gone. The hallway painted red. And the Pope, slowly turning his head toward them. "Go!" Roth bellowed. They ran, hard, boots crashing up the wooden stairs, dodging dangling chains and shadowed doorways, until they burst onto the top deck, gasping for breath, eyes wide, skin slick with sweat. The sails above them were no longer torn. They were whole again, and they fluttered in wind that did not exist. Roth drew his blade. Eloise stood beside him, just the two of them now, only two left on a floating tomb. Chapter 15. The Last Commandment. The wind blew. For the first time since they'd boarded the cursed vessel, wind. It snapped the sails above them and swirled the red mist across the deck like the breath of a sleeping god finally stirred. Captain Roth stood at the bow, blade drawn, boots planted. Eloise stood beside him, her coat whipping in the wind, one red eye locked on the stairs. Then he came. The Pope. He rose from below like a ghost, his footsteps weightless, his eyes brighter than flame. He walked to the center of the deck and stopped, folding his hands before him. Roth raised his sword. "What are you?" he demanded. "Why us? Why this ship?" The Pope didn't answer. He simply opened his mouth and said, "For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me." Exodus 25. Eloise took a step forward. "You were buried for a reason. Someone locked you away. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it." Ecclesiastes 10:8. "You're not God's servant," Roth growled. "You're a demon in white robes. Even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light." 2 Corinthians 11:14. They were losing, not the fight themselves. The Pope stepped closer. Then Eloise did something Roth never expected. She dropped to one knee, blade to the deck, head bowed. "Forgive me," she whispered. The wind stopped. The Pope turned to her. "Repent, therefore, and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out." Acts 3:19. He raised one hand, pointed at Roth. "But first, thou shalt purge the wicked from among you." Deuteronomy 17:7. Eloise stood, her hand moved like lightning, and her blade pierced Roth's chest. He gasped, eyes wide in betrayal, pain, confusion. She twisted, he fell. Silently, she turned to the Pope, breathing hard. "I did what you asked," she said. "Let me go." The Pope nodded, then stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thou shalt not kill." Exodus 20:13. Her body seized. She dropped the blade. Smoke poured from her mouth. She opened her lips to scream, but flames erupted from her throat. Her veins lit up like molten wire, and she fell, face first, onto the deck, burning from the inside out. The Pope stood over both bodies. The ship creaked, and somewhere in the distance, the casket rocked gently in the tide. Epilogue. Ashore. The ship drifted in silence. No wind, no crew. Just the groaning of wood and the slow churn of black waves carrying the cathedral ship toward land. It struck shore just after dawn. The hull scraped across jagged rocks like bones on stone, breaking through fog and sand and time. Pirates waited, dozens of them. A second crew, hardened wreckers who worked this coastline, dragging in every unmanned hull they could claim. Torn flags of their last kills flapped from their masts, rough steel, rougher faces. Every man on the beach had cut a throat before breakfast at least once. They had watched the ship drift for a full day from their cliffside lookout, knew no flag, knew no country, knew only that a ghost ship on an empty tide meant a hold full of treasure and no one left to defend it. And they came prepared to gut it. One of them shouted, "Form up! Steel high! Whoever steps off that boat dies!" The ship rocked once. Then again, a soft thud of footsteps echoed across the gangplank. He appeared. The Pope. White robes trailing in the surf, a censer of black smoke swinging from one hand, eyes lit with purpose. He looked at them, at the blades raised against him, and smiled. Then he spoke. Not loud, but the wind carried his voice like thunder across the sand. "The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord takes vengeance on his adversaries and reserves wrath for his enemies." Nahum 1:2. He raised his hand, and the ship behind him burst into flame. The soldiers screamed, the air turned red, and the world, once again, began to burn. Author's note. Thank you for reading The Widow's Wake. This story came from a place deep inside me, a place where fear, faith, and fury all live side by side. I wrote it not just to terrify, but to provoke thought, to ask what justice really looks like when mercy has been buried too long. I believe in my heart that this story belongs on the big screen. I can see the shadows, the flames, the Pope's silhouette standing in the smoke, and I know that with your support, it'll get there. If this book stirred something in you, if it made you shiver, gasp, or turn on a light in the middle of the night, then please share it. Follow the movement. Help the stories that haunt us find a home. Follow us at Together We Fear. This is just the beginning. With gratitude and fire, Poe Nocturne.